Hello, beautiful soul. I'm Aurora, and welcome to Twin Flame Journey, a space where we explore the deeper meaning behind soul connections, divine timing, and the path that leads two hearts back to union. If you've been feeling the signs, you're in the right place.
I used to think avoidance was emotional emptiness. Like when someone pulls away, goes quiet, disappears, acts cold, or suddenly becomes unreadable, it must mean they do not feel much. But after watching enough people break down in private after looking completely fine in public, I stopped believing that. Avoidance is not always the absence of feeling. Sometimes it is the fear of feeling too much. And there comes a moment when avoidance stops working. The silence no longer protects him. The distance no longer numbs him. The distractions no longer hold his attention. The mask no longer feels like strength. He can still pretend for a while. He can still go to work. Still answer messages. Still laugh at the right moments. Still say, "I'm good," when someone asks. But something inside him is not good. Not anymore. Because the thing he was running from has caught up to him. Her absence. Her energy. The memory of what he felt. The unfinished truth. The emotional weight of the connection he tried to place somewhere he would never have to touch. And now he is touching it. Quietly. Painfully. Alone. So what does the divine masculine feel when avoidance stops working? He feels the collapse of the strategy that once kept him safe. He feels the grief underneath the silence. The longing underneath the distance. The guilt underneath the pride. The love underneath the fear. The truth underneath the story he kept telling himself. And most of all, he feels himself. Maybe for the first time in a long time. That is where this journey begins. Chapter 1. The moment he realizes distance did not make him free. I have seen people call it freedom when it was really emotional escape. They leave. They stop replying. They go quiet. They say they need space. They tell themselves the pressure is gone now. And at first it might feel true. There is a relief that comes when the emotional intensity stops demanding a response. No more hard questions. No more trembling conversations. No more looking into someone's eyes and feeling like they can see the part of you that you have spent years hiding. So he pulls away. He exhales. He thinks this is better. But sometimes, after the first wave of relief, something strange happens. The quiet does not feel peaceful. It feels empty. The space does not feel free. It feels haunted. He thought distance would help him return to himself. Instead, distance brings him face to face with the part of himself he was avoiding. That is a difficult thing for a man to admit. Especially the divine masculine who has built so much of his identity around being steady, controlled, composed, unaffected. He may know how to handle pressure in the outside world. Work pressure, family pressure, financial pressure, practical pressure. But emotional exposure? That is different. A woman's softness can disarm him more than conflict ever could. A real soul connection can make him feel more unsafe than loneliness. Not because she is dangerous, but because intimacy asks him to remove the armor he forgot he was wearing. So he chooses distance. Distance feels simpler. No need to explain. No need to be vulnerable. No need to admit confusion. No need to say, "I care, but I am terrified." He can tell himself he is choosing peace. But then, peace does not arrive. At night, when the day gets quiet, he may feel something under his ribs. Not dramatic, not cinematic. Just a dull pressure, like the body remembering something the mind keeps trying to dismiss. He may check his phone without knowing why. Not to message her. Just to see. Maybe her name is not there. Maybe there is no notification. Maybe the silence he created is finally giving him exactly what he asked for. And still, it does not feel like winning. This is the moment avoidance begins to fail. Not all at once. Avoidance rarely collapses dramatically at first. It weakens in small private ways. He gets distracted at work. He rereads something without absorbing it. He laughs with friends and suddenly feels far away. He hears a song and his face changes before he can stop it. He sees someone with her hair color in a grocery aisle and feels a strange drop in his stomach. That is not freedom. That is emotional memory. That is the body saying, "You left the room, but you did not leave the feeling." And this is what he begins to realize. Distance removed her presence. But it did not remove the imprint. He can avoid the conversation. He can avoid her eyes. He can avoid the vulnerability of being near her. But he cannot fully avoid what she awakened in him. That is what makes this stage so uncomfortable. He may have thought she was the source of the intensity. But once she is gone and the intensity remains, he has to question the story. Was she overwhelming? Or was I overwhelmed by what I felt? Was the connection too much? Or did it reveal too much? Was I seeking peace? Or was I escaping emotional responsibility? These questions do not come neatly. They come in fragments, in pauses, in uncomfortable moments when he cannot distract himself fast enough. And there is often a quiet embarrassment here. A private embarrassment. The kind no one sees. Because he may realize he ran from something he still carries. He may realize the distance did not make him stronger. It only made the feeling quieter for a while, and now the quiet has become loud. This is the first emotional contradiction. He wanted space, but now space feels like loss. He wanted silence, but now silence feels like a mirror. He wanted to feel free, but now freedom feels strangely empty without the woman he tried not to need. And that is where the deeper awakening begins. Not in a grand confession. In a private moment where he finally admits to himself, "I am not as free from this as I thought." Lesson of this chapter. When avoidance stops working, the divine masculine first realizes that distance did not erase the connection. It only removed the immediate pressure, leaving him alone with the emotional imprint he tried to escape. And once distance stops feeling like freedom, he starts feeling the weight of the silence he created. Chapter 2. The silence starts speaking back. I have always found silence strange. It can feel peaceful when it is chosen from love. But when it is used as protection, it eventually becomes heavy. For the divine masculine, silence may have been his safest language for years. When emotions became too complex, he went quiet. When intimacy demanded honesty, he paused too long. When someone wanted clarity, he told himself he needed time. Silence became a hiding place. A place where no one could challenge him. A place where he did not have to say the wrong thing. A place where he could keep control by saying nothing at all. But there comes a moment when silence stops protecting him. It starts speaking back. And what it says is not gentle. It says, "You left things unfinished." It says, "You made her carry questions alone." It says, "You called this peace, but it was fear." That is what he feels when avoidance stops working. The silence he used to hide behind becomes the very place where his truth begins echoing. He may still not text her. He may still not confess anything. He may still look outwardly unchanged. But internally, the silence is no longer neutral. It has texture now. It has her voice in it. It has the memory of things she asked for. It has the ache of conversations he avoided. It has the aftertaste of emotional cowardice, even if that word feels too harsh to say out loud. Raw honesty. Sometimes silence is not maturity. Sometimes it is fear dressed as calm. And when he begins to realize this, something shifts in him. He may remember the last real conversation. Not the words exactly. The feeling. Maybe she was tired. Not angry. Tired. Maybe she looked at him with that specific kind of softness that has almost given up but still hopes not to. Maybe her voice was quiet because she knew if she raised it, he would focus on the tone and miss the pain. She might have said something simple. "I just need honesty." And he froze. Not because he had no truth. Because truth would have required him to be seen. So he gave silence. Or vagueness. Or a half answer. Or he stepped back emotionally while standing right there physically. At the time, silence felt safer. Later, in separation, that silence starts returning to him differently. It no longer feels like control. It feels like a failure to meet a moment that mattered. That is a hard thing for a masculine heart to hold. He may feel guilt, but not the dramatic kind. More like a dull, low-level discomfort. Something he carries while making coffee, while driving, while sitting at a red light, while trying to sleep. He may wonder, why didn't I just say something? Why was it so hard to be honest? Why did I make her guess? Why did I leave when I could have explained? And then a deeper question comes. What was I so afraid she would see? That question touches the wound. Silence was never just silence. It was protection from exposure. If he spoke, she might hear the fear in his voice. If he admitted he cared, he might lose control. If he acknowledged the connection, he might have to become responsible to it. If he told the truth, he could no longer pretend he was untouched. So he chose silence. And now silence has become the room where he meets the consequences of that choice. This is where avoidance begins to crack. A man can avoid a woman. But it is much harder to avoid the sound of his own unfinished words. The words he did not say begin living inside him. I was scared. I did care. I did not know how to handle this. I felt more than I showed. I am sorry I made you carry the silence. Maybe he is not ready to say them to her. But he starts hearing them. That matters. The first confession often happens internally. Before he reaches out, before he changes, before he apologizes. There is a private moment where the truth finally forms inside him without being immediately rejected. A whisper. I avoided. That whisper can change everything. Lesson of this chapter. When avoidance stops working, silence stops being protection and becomes a mirror. The divine masculine begins to hear the words he never said and feel the emotional weight of what he left unfinished. And once silence starts speaking back, the mask begins to lose its comfort. Chapter 3. The mask feels too heavy to keep wearing. I used to think the masculine mask was hard. Now I think it is heavy. Hard things protect. Heavy things exhaust. There is a kind of man who can look completely composed while something inside him is falling apart. He knows how to keep his face still. He knows how to say less. He knows how to appear detached. He knows how to give the impression that nothing has reached him deeply. But a mask requires energy. A lot of it. You have to keep remembering not to show too much. Not to respond too quickly. Not to reveal the ache. Not to let your voice soften. Not to let your eyes say what your mouth refuses to say. At first, the mask feels like control. Later, it starts feeling like a prison. That is what he feels when avoidance stops working. The version of himself that once protected him now feels suffocating. He may still act normal. That is the strange part. He may still go through the motions. Work, messages, gym, friends, responsibilities, the usual performance of being okay. But underneath, something feels false. He knows he is not untouched. He knows he is not as indifferent as he looks. He knows the silence has affected him. He knows her absence has reached places he did not think she could reach. And yet he keeps wearing the face. The calm face. The I'm fine face. The masculine face that says, nothing to see here. But inside, there may be chaos. Not loud chaos. More like emotional pressure building behind a closed door. He may feel irritable for no clear reason. Tired, restless, disconnected. Like he is living two lives at once. The external life where he is functioning, and the internal life where he keeps returning to her memory. This split becomes exhausting. The mask starts to cost more than honesty. Not because honesty is suddenly easy. It is not. Honesty still scares him. But pretending begins to scare him too. What if this is my life? What if I always run from what matters? What if I keep acting fine until I become someone who cannot feel anything deeply? What if the mask wins? That question is terrifying. The mask was supposed to protect his heart. But now he sees it may have also protected him from intimacy, from repair, from the woman who was trying to meet him somewhere real. There is a grief in that. He may not cry. Some men do not cry until years later, and some cry only in strange hidden ways. Sitting in the car after arriving home, but not getting out. Standing in the shower longer than necessary. Looking at an old photo and immediately locking the screen. Not a dramatic breakdown. A contained one. A collapse with the volume turned down. This is where the mask begins to crack. He starts recognizing that the performance is not strength. It is survival. And survival has a limit. A man can survive without vulnerability, but he cannot truly love without it. That realization may arrive slowly, painfully. He may remember how she looked at him during an intimate silence, not asking anything, just seeing him. And maybe in that moment he felt more exposed than he had during any argument. She saw behind the mask. That is what scared him. Not her need. Not her love. Her perception. The way she seemed to feel the hidden room inside him where he kept the unspoken things. When avoidance stops working, he realizes he has been living behind a locked door. And she may have been one of the few people who ever found the handle. So what now? Does he keep pretending? Does he tighten the mask? Does he reach out? Does he let the crack become an opening? He may not know yet. But he knows something he did not want to know before. The mask is not peace. It is weight. And he is tired. Lesson of this chapter. When avoidance stops working, the divine masculine begins to feel the exhaustion of pretending. The mask that once gave him control starts feeling like a prison that keeps him from being truly known. And once the mask feels heavier than the truth, the grief underneath begins to rise. Chapter 4. The grief he buried starts moving through him. I have learned that some people do not feel grief when something ends. They feel it when they can no longer outrun the ending. That is the stage many people never see. The delayed grief. The grief that arrives after the silence. After the distraction. After the ego has stopped telling the same story. After the body finally feels safe enough to admit what was lost. For the divine masculine, grief may not look like what people expect. It may look like irritation, withdrawal, a sudden tiredness, a short temper over small things, a strange inability to enjoy the things that used to distract him. He may not say, "I am grieving." He might not even know that is what it is. But his body knows. His heart knows. Grief starts moving through him when avoidance can no longer hold it back. And this grief is complicated. He is not only grieving her. He may be grieving what he never allowed the connection to become. That is a different kind of pain. The pain of potential. The pain of unfinished tenderness. The pain of knowing something was alive, but his fear kept it from breathing fully. He may remember a moment that seemed small at the time. Her head turned toward the window. Her hand close to his but not touching. Her voice after an argument, softer than he deserved. A message she sent that he read, but did not answer because answering would have required him to be emotionally present. These memories become grief containers. Small places where the feeling gathers. And the grief asks questions. What did I lose? What did I avoid? What did I fail to protect? Why does something unfinished feel heavier than something that clearly ended? This is where avoidance becomes useless. Avoidance can delay grief. It cannot dissolve it. The grief will find another doorway. A dream. A quiet morning. An empty weekend. A conversation with someone else that feels shallow in comparison. A moment when he realizes he has not actually replaced what she made him feel. Not because she was perfect. She was not. No one is. But she reached something. And now the grief is not just about her absence. It is about the part of himself that went silent when she needed him to speak. That can hurt more. A man may be able to grieve a woman. But grieving the version of himself who failed to show up, that cuts deeper. It becomes moral grief. Not guilt exactly. Not shame exactly. Something quieter. The ache of knowing, I could have been more honest. He may feel regret. Then resistance. Then tenderness. Then anger at himself. Then the urge to numb. Then sadness again. Healing is not linear. Masculine awakening is not a clean staircase. It is often messy, private, and full of contradictions. One day he may feel certain that distance was right. The next day, he may feel like he lost something sacred. One moment he may want to reach out. The next, he may convince himself not to disturb her. This is why he may seem silent even when a lot is happening inside. Grief does not always make a man move. Sometimes it makes him freeze. He knows he feels something, but he does not know what to do with the feeling. He wants relief, but he senses that reaching out without responsibility would be unfair. He wants to know if she still cares, but he also knows he may not deserve immediate access to her softness. That is a painful threshold, and it is where avoidance used to save him. Avoidance would say, do nothing, feel nothing, move on. But avoidance has stopped working. So now he has to feel. Not perfectly, not bravely every day, but enough to realize that grief is not his enemy. Grief is proof that something mattered. And if he listens closely, grief may become a teacher. It may teach him that silence has consequences, that love needs courage, that emotional safety cannot be built by disappearing, that if he wants sacred connection, he must learn to stay present when it becomes uncomfortable. That is what the buried grief is trying to show him. Lesson of this chapter. When avoidance stops working, buried grief begins to move. The divine masculine grieves not only her absence, but the truth of what he left unfinished and the version of himself that did not show up. And when grief finally starts speaking, regret is not far behind. Chapter 5. Regret hits differently when there is no one left to blame. There is a kind of regret that only arrives when blame gets tired. At first, he may have blamed the intensity, the timing, the pressure, the confusion, her emotions, his past, his circumstances. Some of those things may have been real. Life is not simple. People are not simple. Connections do not fall apart for one reason. But there comes a point when the excuses stop bringing relief. He says, it was complicated. And something inside him whispers, yes, but you still avoided. He says, I was overwhelmed. And the whisper says, yes, but you still left her carrying the silence. He says, I did not know what to do. And the whisper says, you could have said that. This is when regret hits differently. Not the shallow regret of missing attention. A deeper regret. The kind that makes him look at his own behavior without instantly running from it. He may replay certain moments and finally see them from her side. That is painful. Really painful. He may remember how she tried to explain something, and he heard it as criticism. Now in separation, he understands she was trying to create safety. He may remember how she asked for consistency, and he felt controlled. Now he realizes consistency is not control. It is care. He may remember how she went quiet near the end, and he thought she was being distant. Now he realizes she may have been exhausted. That realization can sting. There is a specific kind of masculine regret that sounds like this. I did not know what I had while I had it. But underneath that is a harder sentence. I did not know how to honor what I had. That is the wound. Missing her may make him sad. Seeing how he mishandled her may humble him. And humility is what avoidance was protecting him from. He did not want to feel small. He did not want to feel wrong. He did not want to feel responsible for someone else's pain. He did not want to admit that his silence was not neutral. But when avoidance stops working, he starts understanding impact. Not intention. Impact. He may not have intended to hurt her. He may not have intended to confuse her. He may not have intended to make her feel alone in the connection. Still, she felt it. That is the part mature masculinity must learn to hold. I did not mean to does not erase it happened. That sentence can change a man if he lets it. It moves him out of defensiveness and into responsibility. At this stage, he may feel the urge to apologize. But another fear arises. What if she does not answer? What if she has changed? What if he says too much? What if he says too little? What if apology reopens something he is not ready to hold? So he may sit with regret for a while. Privately. Awkwardly. Uncomfortably. He may type a message and delete it. Not once. Many times. He may stare at the screen and feel his throat tighten. The words are there, but not fully. He wants to say, I'm sorry, but he knows that sounds too small for the size of what he now feels. This is where regret becomes a test. Will he use regret to grow? Or will he use regret as another reason to hide? Some men feel regret and collapse into shame. They disappear further. They tell themselves, I already ruined it. That is still avoidance, just dressed as self-punishment. A different man lets regret mature into accountability. He does not need to punish himself forever. He needs to become more honest, more careful, more present, more willing to communicate before silence becomes harm. The point of regret is not to make him suffer. It is to make him conscious. And if consciousness takes root, he begins to feel the connection differently. Not as something he lost, as something he was invited to honor. That invitation may still be there, or it may not. But either way, the lesson remains. Lesson of this chapter. When avoidance stops working, regret becomes harder to escape. The divine masculine begins to see not only what he lost, but how his silence, fear, and passivity affected her. And once regret becomes accountability, he starts facing the feeling he avoided most. Love. Chapter 6. He finally feels the love without the panic. I need to say something that sounds contradictory. Sometimes a man feels love more clearly after he is no longer close enough to be threatened by it. That is not romantic. It is tragic. But it is real. When she was near, love came with pressure in his body. Not because she was doing something wrong. Because intimacy activated everything he had not healed. Her closeness asked him to be present. Her tenderness asked him to receive. Her emotional honesty asked him to respond. Her vulnerability asked him not to disappear. For someone with avoidant patterns, that can feel like danger. Even if the love is beautiful. Especially if the love is beautiful. The body does strange things when it confuses intimacy with loss of control. His chest tightens. His mind searches for flaws. He feels the urge to create space. He becomes hyper-aware of expectations. He starts thinking, this is too much, when the deeper truth might be, I feel too much. So he avoids. Then, in separation, the immediate emotional demand is gone. She is not asking him to speak. She is not looking at him with hurt eyes. She is not standing close enough for him to feel exposed. The panic lowers. And the love rises. That is the painful irony. He may finally feel the tenderness after he no longer has to respond to it in real time. He may finally understand that he cared after he no longer has her right there. He may finally feel the depth after distance has made it safer to acknowledge. This does not mean separation creates love. It reveals what fear was drowning out. In presence, fear screamed. In separation, love whispers. And for the first time, he may hear it. He may feel warmth when he remembers her. Not just guilt. Warmth. The way she laughed. The way she cared about details. The way she noticed changes in his mood. The way she saw through his, I'm fine, without making him feel exposed on purpose. He may realize he misses her not only because she loved him, but because she made him feel human. That realization can soften him. A lot. A man can survive for years being functional and emotionally undernourished. Then one person comes along and touches the starved place, and suddenly the whole body remembers hunger. That is what she may have awakened. Not dependency. Hunger for real emotional contact. The kind he may have told himself he did not need. When avoidance stops working, he can no longer confuse numbness with strength. He begins to feel how much he wanted to be loved without having to perform. He begins to feel how deeply he longed to be seen without being judged. He begins to feel how afraid he was that if someone truly saw him, they would eventually leave. So he left first. That is the hidden wound. Leave before being left. Detach before needing. Go silent before saying too much. Pull away before the other person gets close enough to matter more than you can control. But love does not disappear simply because control tries to bury it. It waits. Sometimes quietly. Sometimes painfully. And when avoidance stops working, love begins rising through the cracks. This may be the most vulnerable stage. He may feel tenderness and grief at the same time. Love and fear. Longing and shame. Desire and hesitation. He may want to reach out, but also feel unworthy of disrupting her peace. He may want to confess, but fear that confession without readiness would be selfish. He may want to return, but know that returning would require him to become more honest than he has ever been. That is where love becomes more than a feeling. It becomes a demand for growth. Not a demand from her. A demand from life. From the soul. From the part of him that no longer wants to be ruled by avoidance. This is what he feels when avoidance stops working. Love without the easy escape. Love without the numbness. Love without the old story protecting him. And now he has to decide what kind of man he will be in the presence of that love. Lesson of this chapter. When avoidance stops working, the divine masculine may finally feel the love without the panic that once drowned it out. Distance lowers his defenses, allowing tenderness and longing to surface. But feeling love is not enough. Unless he becomes brave enough to meet it. Chapter 7. He feels the fear of being too late. I have noticed that one of the deepest masculine fears is not always rejection. Sometimes it is arriving after the door has changed. Not closed necessarily. Changed. He begins to feel the love. He begins to understand the regret. He begins to see the silence differently. He begins to realize avoidance did not save him. Then another feeling arrives. Fear. Not the same fear as before. Before, he feared closeness. Now, he fears the consequence of distance. What if she is different now? What if her softness has boundaries? What if she no longer believes his silence means hidden depth? What if she still cares but no longer waits? What if he finally feels ready to speak, and she has finally learned not to need his words to be whole? This fear can be devastating, because he may sense the energetic shift. The woman who once reached may not be reaching. The woman who once explained may not be explaining. The woman who once softened everything may not be offering the same access. And somewhere inside him, he understands. His delay changed her. That is a hard thing to face. A lot of avoidant men secretly hope time will pause the feminine heart. They do not think it consciously, but emotionally they assume she will remain where they left her. Still open. Still waiting. Still ready to understand. Still available to the version of him that needed more time. But she has been living too. Hurting. Healing. Learning. Detaching. Returning to herself. While he was avoiding, she was changing. This realization can bring a sharp fear. I may be too late. Not because love disappeared. Because access changed. There is a difference. She may still remember him. She may still feel the bond. She may still have tenderness. But she is no longer the woman who hands her peace over to uncertainty. This is where his avoidance confronts time. Avoidance always assumes there will be more time. More time to think. More time to decide. More time to explain later. More time to come back when the fear is quieter. But emotional availability is not frozen. A woman's heart can remain loving while her self-respect becomes stronger than her longing. That is the part he may not have expected. He thought she would either love him or not love him. But there is a third possibility. She can love him and still choose herself. That is the possibility that shakes him. It is easier for the masculine ego to handle rejection than self-respect sometimes. Rejection gives him a story. She stopped caring. Self-respect gives him a mirror. She cared, and my avoidance made her protect herself. That mirror is painful. He may feel panic. Not dramatic panic. A quiet urgency in the body. He may feel like he wants to reach out immediately, but also feels frozen. He may fear saying the wrong thing. He may fear being met with calm instead of longing. He may fear realizing that the old emotional door no longer opens the same way. So again, he stands at a threshold. Avoidance once kept him away from vulnerability. Now avoidance threatens to cost him the connection completely. That is the reversal. The strategy that once felt safe has become dangerous. If he stays silent now, the silence may not preserve control. It may confirm absence. If he delays now, delay may not give him clarity. It may prove he still cannot show up. If he hides now, hiding may not protect him. It may become the final answer. This is where the divine masculine begins feeling the weight of choice. Not fantasy. Choice. Speak or remain silent. Grow or repeat. Show up or stay protected. Risk vulnerability or keep losing what matters. And for some men, this is the first time they understand that love requires timing too. Not rushed timing. Not forced timing. But conscious timing. There is a moment when the heart asks for courage, and if he keeps postponing it, the moment transforms. Not because she is cruel, because she is healing. Lesson of this chapter. When avoidance stops working, the divine masculine may feel the fear of being too late. He realizes her love may still exist, but her access, softness, and willingness to wait have changed. And once he feels that time has moved without him, he must choose whether to remain hidden or finally step forward. Chapter 8. His desire to return collides with his fear of accountability. I have seen people want to return and still be afraid of what return requires. That is one of the most human contradictions in this whole journey. He may miss her. He may feel the love. He may regret the silence. He may fear being too late. But returning is not simple. Returning means facing the woman he affected. It means entering a conversation he once avoided. It means hearing her pain without running. It means admitting that his distance had consequences. It means not making his fear the center of the story. That is where desire collides with accountability. He may want the warmth back. But accountability stands at the door and says, "Not so fast." He may want to say, "I miss you." Accountability asks, "Are you ready to say what you understand now?" He may want to feel close again. Accountability asks, "Can you respect that closeness may need to be rebuilt slowly?" He may want relief. Accountability asks, "Can you offer repair before asking for comfort?" This is where avoidance tries to revive itself. Even after it has stopped working emotionally, it may still appear behaviorally. He may think of reaching out, then freeze. He may write a message, then delete it. He may convince himself she is better off without hearing from him. Sometimes that is genuine care. Sometimes it is fear wearing the clothing of care. There is a difference. Genuine care says, "I will not disturb her unless I can come with respect." Fear says, "I will avoid accountability by telling myself silence is noble." That line can be hard to see. Even for him. He may honestly believe he is sparing her, when part of him is also sparing himself from the vulnerability of being accountable. This is the messy part. The part people rarely talk about. Masculine awakening does not instantly make someone courageous. Sometimes it simply makes them aware of how much courage they lack. He may feel embarrassed. He may know he should have spoken earlier. He may feel like any apology is too late or too small. He may worry that if he reaches out, she will ask the questions he still struggles to answer. Why did you disappear? What did you feel? Why did you act like it meant nothing? Why now? Those questions may terrify him. Not because he has no answers. Because the answers require emotional nakedness. I was scared. I did not know how to be close. I felt too much and shut down. I wanted you, but I did not know how to meet what you awakened in me. I took your patience for granted. Those are not easy sentences for a man who has lived behind control. So he may hover. Emotionally near. Physically distant. Spiritually stirred. Humanly afraid. This is a frustrating stage for the feminine, if she can feel it. She may sense him close energetically, but see no grounded action. She may feel the pull, then remind herself, energy is not enough. She may feel compassion, then remember she cannot carry his courage. That is important. She cannot carry his courage. If he wants to return, he must bring more than longing. He must bring willingness. Willingness to be clumsy. Willingness to be honest. Willingness to say the imperfect thing instead of hiding behind perfect silence. Willingness to let her have her feelings without making them proof that he is bad. Accountability is not self-hatred. It is emotional adulthood. It says, I can face the impact of my actions without collapsing or defending. That is what avoidance was preventing. Avoidance kept him from feeling exposed. Accountability requires exposure. So the collision is intense. He wants connection. But connection now requires him to become the man avoidance never asked him to be. This is where his return, if it happens, begins taking shape. Will it be a vague return? A "hey, how are you" return? A testing the water return? Or a real return? A return that says, "I know I left things unclear. I have been thinking about that. I do not expect anything from you, but I wanted to be honest." That kind of return does not need to be perfect. It needs to be real. And real is what avoidance fears most. Lesson of this chapter. When avoidance stops working, his desire to return collides with the fear of accountability. He may feel love and regret, but returning differently requires emotional courage, humility, and willingness to face impact. And if he can cross that threshold, his energy begins to change. Chapter 9. He begins to understand love requires presence, not just feeling. There is a painful lesson many people learn late. Feeling deeply is not the same as loving well. A man can feel a woman in his bones and still not know how to show up for her. He can dream about her, miss her, think about her, feel her absence, sense the soul connection, and still fail to create emotional safety. This is where the divine masculine begins to mature when avoidance stops working. He starts understanding that love cannot remain only internal. It cannot live forever as unspoken feeling. It cannot hide forever behind, "I care, but I don't know how to say it." It cannot keep asking the feminine to sense what he refuses to embody. At some point, love must become presence. Presence is not grand. It is not always dramatic. Presence is answering honestly. Presence is saying, "I need time," instead of disappearing. Presence is staying in the room emotionally when the conversation becomes uncomfortable. Presence is not making her nervous system pay for his inability to communicate. This is a profound realization for the avoidant masculine. He may have believed his feelings were enough. If he felt deeply, that meant something. And yes, it does mean something. But not everything. A feeling that never becomes care can become painful to the person waiting for it to arrive in reality. That is hard to accept. He may think, "But I did care." And the deeper wisdom answers, "Then why did she feel alone?" That question cuts through all the spiritual fog. If he cared, but she felt abandoned, something important was missing. Presence. This is where spiritual psychology becomes grounded. A soul connection may explain the depth. It does not excuse the absence. Masculine awakening is not only realizing he loves her. It is realizing love has responsibilities. Communication. Consistency. Emotional repair. Respect for timing. Respect for boundaries. The courage to be seen imperfectly. He may begin to understand that the feminine was not asking him to perform emotional perfection. She was asking him to be present enough that she did not have to carry the connection alone. That is different. She was not asking for a flawless man. She was asking for a reachable one. A man she could talk to. A man who did not vanish when things became real. A man who could say, "I am scared," instead of becoming cold. A man who knew that silence can wound, even without cruel intentions. When avoidance stops working, he begins seeing this. Not as theory, as memory. He remembers her face when he shut down. He remembers the pause after she said something vulnerable, and he did not know how to respond. He remembers the emotional distance he created in moments where closeness needed protection. And he begins to understand. Love without presence becomes a ghost. It can haunt. It can ache. It can pull. But it cannot hold. Presence is what gives love a body. Without presence, she may feel him spiritually and still feel alone emotionally. Without presence, he may feel her deeply and still be unavailable in the ways that matter. This is where he is invited into embodied masculinity. Not masculine as dominance. Masculine as grounded truth. A man who can say what he means. A man who can own what he avoids. A man who can stop using silence as a shield. A man who can protect intimacy by remaining present when his first instinct is to run. That is not easy. But it is the work. If he begins to understand this, his energy changes. He may stop romanticizing his hidden feelings. He may stop believing that missing her privately is proof enough. He may start asking, how do I become safe for the love I feel? That question is the beginning of real transformation. Not, how do I get her back? A deeper question. How do I become someone who does not make love feel unsafe? That is the question the awakened masculine must face. Lesson of this chapter. When avoidance stops working, the divine masculine begins to understand that feeling deeply is not enough. Love must become presence, communication, consistency, and emotional safety. And once he realizes love needs a body, he has to decide whether he is willing to become one. Chapter 10. When avoidance fails, truth becomes the only door left. I will say this quietly. Avoidance does not stop working because someone forces it to stop. It stops working when the soul gets tired of hiding. That is the final stage. He has tried distance. It did not free him. He has tried silence. It started speaking back. He has worn the mask. It became too heavy. He has buried grief. It began moving. He has blamed the intensity. Regret found him anyway. He has felt love from a distance. Now presence is asking for courage. So what is left? Truth. Not the polished kind. Not the kind that sounds perfect in a message. Not the kind that makes him look noble or emotionally evolved. Just truth. I was afraid. I avoided. I felt more than I knew how to handle. I did not know how to receive you. I made silence do the work my honesty should have done. I understand if you are not where I left you. These sentences are simple, but they can feel like walking barefoot over glass for someone who has survived through control. Still, when avoidance fails, truth becomes the only door left. He may not walk through it immediately. Some men stand outside that door for a long time. Thinking, feeling, regretting, almost speaking, then disappearing again. That is real. Not every awakening becomes action. Not every feeling becomes courage. Not every man who feels deeply becomes a man who can love safely. We have to be honest about that. Spiritual connection does not cancel human capacity. A divine masculine can feel the soul bond and still be emotionally underdeveloped. He can awaken internally and still need time, therapy, humility, practice, and painful self-honesty before he can meet love in a healthy way. So the final message is not, wait because he feels it. No. The message is more grounded. If avoidance has stopped working in him, let truth do its work. Let him feel the silence. Let him face the grief. Let him carry the regret. Let him understand what his distance created. Let him decide whether he will become responsible. And for the divine feminine, do not turn his internal collapse into your assignment. Do not rush in because you sense he is feeling. Do not abandon your healing because his heart is finally opening. Do not confuse his pain with readiness. Do not accept invisible love as a substitute for embodied presence. You can have compassion. Of course you can. You are human. You may still love him. You may still feel the bond. You may sense the ache in him. You may know, in that deep, quiet place, that he is not as untouched as he looks. But your softness must now include you. Your peace matters. Your body matters. Your need for consistency matters. Your desire to be met in real life, not only felt in separation, matters. If he comes through the door of truth, let his truth be matched by action. Let his apology be matched by changed behavior. Let his longing be matched by presence. Let his awakening be matched by emotional responsibility. If he does not come, or if he comes with the same avoidance wearing softer words, you are allowed to keep walking. Not because the connection meant nothing, but because you mean something too. That is the sacred balance. His avoidance failing may be a turning point for him. Your discernment must be the turning point for you. He must learn that he cannot keep hiding from love. You must remember that you cannot keep chasing love into someone who hides. Both lessons are holy. Both lessons hurt. Both lessons can set you free. So when avoidance stops working, what does the divine masculine feel? He feels the failure of distance, the echo of silence, the exhaustion of the mask, the grief of what was unfinished. the regret of what he took for granted, the love beneath the panic, the fear of being too late, the collision between longing and accountability, the realization that love requires presence, and finally, the call of truth. That is where real awakening begins. Not when he misses her, not when he dreams about her, not when he feels her energy, but when he becomes willing to stop using avoidance as a shelter from his own heart. If this message touched something in you, write in the comments. Presence is the proof. Like this video if it gave you clarity. Subscribe for more spiritual psychology, divine masculine, divine feminine, soul connection, separation, and emotional awakening insights. And share this with someone who needs to remember. Avoidance can delay love, but it cannot replace truth. Lesson of this chapter. When avoidance stops working, truth becomes the only door left. His awakening is not proven by what he feels in silence, but by whether he becomes honest, present, and responsible in love. And if he cannot, your healing still deserves to continue.
Thank you for spending this moment with me. If this message resonated with your soul, remember to subscribe and continue this journey with us here on Twin Flame Journey. And always remember, what is meant for your soul will always find its way back to you. Until next time, beautiful soul, trust the journey.